Here's a clip that I want to share, which is so powerful. Thomas Crooks mysteriously went offline after connecting with a mysterious figure who was linked to, get this, a terrorist group being monitored by the U.S. State Department, according to Tucker Carlson Watch.
These remarks were especially notable because they came at the final phase of Crooks's YouTube commenting. At that point, a new character emerged into the conversation, a user named Willie Tepes, who started pressuring Crooks to commit violence. For example, quote, "If a gun and a badge is all that is needed, then authority obviously comes from the barrel of a gun. We have more guns than they do. There is no way we can avoid a war at this point, so you better just get used to the idea. We have nothing to lose and everything to win. And the alternative, a global police state, is unacceptable. Nothing in life is simple, but that is no argument against doing it." So who is this Willie Tepes? Unfortunately, we don't know. The FBI hasn't made any mention of him in public, although they certainly know he exists. Just days after the shooting, somebody screenshotted Tepes' YouTube account page, despite the fact he had very few followers. To the extent that he can be traced online now, you can find his username being used on a foreign Antifa website. Those sites link him to the Nordic Resistance Movement, which has been designated a terrorist group by the U.S. State Department. That's all we know. We do know, however, that Crooks' online footprint abruptly ends after his encounter with this mysterious figure, Willie Tepes. Regardless of whoever Willie Tepes is or was and what his motives may have been, who he may have been working for, there is no doubt that Crooks was ripe for recruitment by someone. From early 2019 to mid-2020, as his political views were evolving, Crooks searched for Trump more than 700 times online. He also searched for Jack Ruby, the man who assassinated Lee Harvey Oswald. He then submitted queries for craziest chemical reactions, cars running over protesters, best places for mass shooting El Paso, Trump Civil War, Orlando shooting reaction, firing an AR-15 as fast as possible, fertilizer bomb, how to make napalm, how to make a Molotov cocktail, mass shooting Canada, Oklahoma bombing, and sniper in Dallas shooting. He also searched for American Nazi Party, German National Anthem 1933-1945, Hitler's speeches with subtitles, neo-Nazis, and, quote, why gays need to go. So here you have a volatile, troubled, possibly mentally ill young man with a long record of espousing violence in public. The FBI clearly knew he existed. And then you have, at the very end of his years commenting in public, espousing violence, an exchange with a mysterious figure affiliated with a group that we know is being monitored by the U.S. State Department. It turns out that around the same time that Thomas Crooks was making these searches and posting overt threats of violence against public figures on YouTube, the FBI was issuing contracts to private sector tech surveillance firms to harness the power of mass data collection tools that would monitor social media for people just like Thomas Crooks. It's hard to imagine that Thomas Crooks, who was making these posts publicly and in his own name, had not been identified and looked at closely by federal law enforcement. In fact, it's impossible to imagine. What do we know? Well, we know that the FBI had access to these YouTube comments, and rather than giving us valuable information about them, giving us a sense of why Thomas Crooks did what he did, they used a selective read of those comments to lie about what Thomas Crooks was thinking. 2.5 weeks after the attack on July 30th, a source familiar with the investigation told CNN that, quote, federal investigators are looking into a YouTube account possibly connected to Crooks in which the user espoused political violence as well as anti-Semitic and anti-immigration themes. Well, of course, it wasn't possibly connected to Thomas Crooks, as the FBI knew full well it was Thomas Crooks' account. There was never any question about that. And yet the same day, the FBI's then deputy director made the same dishonest claim before Congress. The week previous, then FBI Director Christopher Wray publicly questioned whether Trump was even shot.
With respect to former President Trump, there's some question about whether or not it's a bullet or shrapnel that hit his ear.
In February 2025, the New York Post reported that, quote, the FBI has obstructed efforts to solve the mystery of why Thomas Matthew Crooks, who left no manifesto, did what he did. And this fact, said the Post, left local law enforcement as well as Crooks's former friends, classmates, and teachers frustrated. The level of lying and obstruction is shocking. Less than a month after the shooting, Congressman Clay Higgins of Louisiana, a former police officer, traveled to Butler to conduct his own investigation into what happened. When he arrived, he discovered a disturbing fact. The FBI released Crooks's body for cremation 10 days after July 13th. This wasn't known to the public until Higgins arrived in Butler on August 5th, when the coroner told the congressman, quote, he would never have released Crooks's body to the family for cremation or burial without specific permission from the FBI. The timing of Crooks's cremation is notable. The day Crooks's body was burned was also the day the House Homeland Security and Oversight Committees had begun their investigations into the shooting. The fact the body was cremated made it impossible for investigators outside the FBI to verify the coroner and autopsy report. You can't do a new tox screen because the body doesn't exist.
I mean, I was like stunned into silence after watching this entire documentary. It is mesmerizing. And what's crazy is it's abundantly true that along with the Epstein files, where Pam Bondi had, the file, and I don't like to harp on anybody. I'm not trying to judge. I'm not trying to say, I want this administration, I want this Department of Justice to win, because if they win, America wins. And I have a vested interest in that because I love my country. I was born and raised here. My kids are here, and it's the greatest country man has ever known. But I think it's important to identify negligence, gross negligence, error, failure, where it resides. And this is an utter, complete failure. We knew more about a guy who had an affair at the Coldplay concert within literally 12 to 24 hours. We knew everything about this guy, this CEO guy, than we do about Matthew Thomas Crooks, and it's been over a year. That makes zero sense. And I think the questions that we need to be asking and the probing that we need to continue to do, because we're Americans and Americans always want the truth, our pursuit of truth is one of the pillars of who we are. It is in our DNA. It is the very identity that is emblematic of being an American. We need to understand what's going on. We need answers, and we need answers now. I want to end with this. I can't wait to get your comments on this. Let me know in the comments down below. I want to end with this awesome final clip of the Tucker Carlson show, which I just think speaks for itself, asking all the same probing questions and demanding the truth and uncovering, yielding a unequivocal fact that the FBI lied. I mean, Tucker proved it. Watch.
The stonewalling, the lying, the persistent unwillingness to explain anything, all of it makes you wonder, what are they hiding? If the leadership of the FBI and the DOJ had any desire whatsoever to prove to the public that there is in fact nothing there, they could do that. But first they would have to answer these questions. Was Thomas Crooks known to federal law enforcement before the shooting? Was he known to local law enforcement before the shooting? And if not, why not? Who is Willie Tepes, and was he known to federal law enforcement? Is Willie Tepes linked to any violent organizations? Is he linked to any governments? And if so, then around the time of the shooting, did the FBI have assets inside those organizations? If Crooks wasn't known to anyone in authority before the shooting, how was he able to post hundreds of violent extremist comments under his real name between 2019 and 2020 without being detected by law enforcement or intel agencies at a time we know they were monitoring social media? Were those comments, including specific assassination threats against specific public officials, ever reported to YouTube? Other users complained about them. Did YouTube know? Why is the FBI telling us that they'll release this information, quote, after the trial, when there is no trial? Why did an FBI agent from the Technical Hazards Response Unit hose down the crime scene the day after the attack? That seems very strange. What happened on the roof of the American Glass Research Building for the 10 seconds after Crooks's last shot until he was killed by the Secret Service? Does the FBI have surveillance footage of Thomas Crooks shooting that day? Was the FBI present at the medical examiner's autopsy? Are there still blood samples? Can they be examined by outside authorities? When Congress demanded the autopsy Did the FBI restrict what the examiner could tell the Congress? When the FBI cleared the coroner to release Crooks's body for cremation, did they keep tissue samples, brain tissue samples, spinal cord samples, or spinal fluid samples? Law enforcement sources told us that in a typical investigation in a crime of this nature, it would be normal to preserve all of that, those samples. If the FBI didn't, why not? And who made that decision to destroy what could be critical evidence in an attempted murder case? FBI agents went to the same gun range that Thomas Crooks was using. Who were those agents, and did any of them at any time have any contact with Thomas Crooks? Who did he train with exactly, and why can't we know? Was Thomas Crooks taking drugs that might have turned up on the toxicology report, but that weren't listed somehow? On what date specifically did FBI agents stop investigating Thomas Crooks's online presence? Why did the former deputy director of the FBI, Paul Abate, suggest to Congress that Crooks was a right-winger when he clearly wasn't? Was the FBI aware of Crooks's public comments before the shooting, many of which are openly violent, that included specific assassination attempts involving public officials? Who was Thomas Crooks in communication with in the days before the attack? What does his burner phone show? And in fact, why did he have a burner phone and encrypted foreign email accounts? Who are the government officials trying to link Iran to the shooting? Why did the FBI suggest that he had no digital footprint in the first place when the FBI had a great deal of evidence, hundreds and hundreds of comments from his digital activity? And what's on the other dozen accounts that the FBI clearly had access to? How long had Thomas Crooks been planning to commit an assassination? If there's nothing there, if they tell you this is just a lone nut who gave no indication he might do this, then what is stopping the FBI from at least giving the facts to Congress? Because if there's nothing there, these should be very easy questions to answer.